Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us for August episode of Good News in Parks. I'm Anne Marie Spencer, and my co-host Jody Adams and I, along with our three panelists today, are going to talk about innovation. It's top of mind. And in my humble opinion, there is no one more qualified to talk about innovation than Park and Rec people. They innovate new services, and especially during the pandemic, they innovated new ways to ensure people were able to get outdoors, get exercise, eat healthy, and enjoy life. Jody, I just love this topic, and I've been looking forward to it. It was one of the top choices when we asked what the audience wanted as a future topic, and here we are. So tell us who we have on the panel today and what's going on with news.
Well, we do have some change makers, so here we go.
Yeah.
Dan West, Director of Broward County, Florida, Parks and Recreation Department. Dan is a fellow member of the American Academy of Park and Recreation Administrators. He also is a past State Parks Director for Ohio State Parks. He's also a board member for the National Association, past board member for the State Parks Directors. And in 2007, he received the Ohio Park Professional of the Year Award, esteemed award recognition. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Carleen Dixon, recent director, Henderson County, North Carolina Parks and Recreation Department. She is current board member with the National Association of Certified Parks and Recreation Professionals. She is a certified Parks and Recreation executive and a graduate of Revenue Development and Management School with the NRPA. Past executive leader for Transylvania County, North Carolina, City of Pasco, Washington, and City of Redmond, California, just to name a few. Oh my gosh, woo, that was quite a list. And then also she is passionate about health and fitness and is a certified personal trainer plus a TRX fitness instructor. Carleen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Michael Kies, Superintendent of Recreation, St. Charles, Illinois, Park District. He is a fellow member of the American Academy of Park and Recreation Administrators. He is a certified Parks and Recreation executive and graduate of NRPA Director School. He's also a past leader of the Hoffman Estate Park District, Round Lake Area Park District, and McGraw YMCA, Evanston, Illinois, just to name a few. Again, quite a list. He is also past chair of the Hoffman Estates Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors and current chair of Illinois Parks and Recreation Foundation. Michael, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Jody and Anne Marie. I'm excited to be here and learn just as long, along with all the other professionals.
Absolutely. In every show we learn. It's wonderful, all the sharing. All right, folks, let's go to good news, national news. Two major resources were actually delivered this to our country through the NRPA. And these two resources are key for you. One is the 2022 NRPA Park and Recreation Salary Survey. This is very enlightening, but very exciting. From 2021 to 2022, we have actually seen an increase in salaries for full-time employees. And it is 3.1 to 3.8, and that is an amazing increase in 1 year for our workforce. And this was surveyed of every entry-level managers all the way through directors. So take a look at that resource. The second one, Equity in Practice Resource Library, has just been loaded up over 400 valuable DEI resources for every level of management and for implementation internally and externally for organizations and agencies has been loaded up on the NRPA website. You go to nrpa.org and you go to the tab for research and resources. These are both critical and currently, as we're talking about, current trends and innovations. Finally, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation will offer on August 16th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, a nationwide path forward special update with the White House COVID response leadership team. This came from a fellow colleague that wanted to make everyone aware of this. This is going to be very detailed, and it's going to give us best practices going forward. They will share with, also, it will be for public and private business. I kind of like saying that because we do run very, very intense businesses for our public. And then also, just to know that Google, if you Google U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation website, and Anne Marie, would you look at possibly loading up the link that we were able and given by our colleague in the chat box? But if you can't get to that, go to the Chamber of Commerce Foundation website. August 16th, 2 p.m. Eastern will be on that website, and it should be right on the front.
Yeah, and
Okay.
if somebody in the audience just wants to say, hey, can you post that link? We can't start Q&As, but we can respond to them. So if somebody out there is interested in me posting that in the Q&A, just ask that question and I'll post the link in response.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right, let's go to our first question, panelists. Here we go. All right, when talking about innovation, we are referring to something unique or has the wow factor. What is something you have experienced or implemented in your current or past agency that has this type of innovation factor? Unique or the wow factor? Dan, let's start with you.
Okay, thank you, Jody, and thank you for allowing me to be part of this. This is pretty neat. I've been fortunate in my career to be involved in a lot of projects, and I'm going to skip right to the, I guess, most recent and last, not many of the years I've been involved in their wow factor, but I've been a small part of many of them. But this one, when I first came on board in Broward County about 12 years ago from leaving Ohio State Parks, we took on a project that was formerly a Fish and Wildlife Commission project that we actually was leasing to them. We took the land back over again. In fact, we worked with the South Florida Water Management District to get this site as well, since they had the right of way. It's an area that, if you've never been to South Florida, it sits on the edge of the conservation areas A and B and the Everglades. It's actually literally the gateway to the Everglades for Broward County residents. It's over 355,000 acres of direct access into a vast network of everything tropical, wetlands to marshes to everything you can think of. So it includes a host of other state and federal partners. And so it's really kind of a unique venue. So we worked with a contractor on site that we had already. It was a contract management team we had from an airboat rental business. If you ever watched the Gator Boys on Animal Network, that's where they actually originated out of. And so,
Oh my God.
They had airboat tours and every kind of bit thing you could think of. They had a small restaurant on site, rental business, and everything else. That's still there to today. So it's really kind of a neat thing to have as a start of this venue. But what we did was we transformed the facility from a very backwoods Everglades post to now a $20 million investment that we've been making. That we finally got through the first phase of it. We completed everything from modernizing and making it more functional from a lot of different standpoints, including an outdated park into what is truly a destination attraction for many, many people, not just in Broward, but in regional, state, as well as national and international. So the collaborative relationship with the Corps and with the Environmental Protection Agency, South Florida Water Management, and a lot of local federal partners, we did a lot. So it's one of the top 10 attractions in Florida, and now named one of the top 10 attractions worldwide. And it was named Traveler's Choice Award by TripAdvisor. And so we've been very, very proud of it. We took it from where it was before. We did a lot of work on site. We actually raised the elevation of the site almost 2 feet. And put a levee wall in place, did a lot of boat ramps and other things to bring people from not just from Broward County and around the surrounding area, but really from overseas. We get a lot of port traffic and airport traffic. So it was really a kind of a destination point for us. We were really proud of it. But if you ever get to this area of the state, very seldom in my career have I been able to actually follow a project from beginning to end. Usually you start it in your job, you never really finish it. And this one, we can say that we're now to that first phase of finishing it, and we're hoping to get to the next phase, which is actually taking it 26 miles to the west and actually having a bikeway around the glades and bringing in observation towers and lots of other components, eco cabins and remote camping and all the other components. So it's really going to be a fun project for us. And it's one of those wild things that everybody in their career, you hope, have a part in that. And I think we're really, really pleased with it. So that's my wow factor to share.
That's a huge wow. Dan, how would someone go to find this location and just lead us through that? How would they find it?
So really, Broward County is in the Fort Lauderdale region of the state. Everybody thinks of Broward County. They actually think of Fort Lauderdale. In fact, our convention center is Greater Fort Lauderdale Convention Center. You fly into Fort Lauderdale, you can take really about a 20-minute trip out to the Glades. It's one of those counties where it's actually the closest place for most to go to the Everglades. It's right out of the airport or the cruise ship terminal to get to the Glades. So you just, it's a pretty easy drive. Broward County is a kind of unique place. It's got the seagrass on one side and the sawgrass on the other. And this is the sawgrass side.
Interesting. So interesting. Thank you for sharing. Okay, folks, right there. This is a model. And so I hope you'll take advantage of that. So Dan, thank you so much. Carleen, please jump in.
Absolutely. Thanks. I want to go visit Dan and have him take me on a tour. It sounds amazing. So
Absolutely.
Field trip.
right.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, I'm going to talk about a project, a recent project that's not actually 100% complete yet. And it is an all-inclusive playground, which now maybe that in and of itself does not seem like the most innovative, but I think the innovative piece was funding it. And that's what I wanted to talk about today. In what I consider rural West and North Carolina, resources for capital projects seem to be a lot tougher than in other locations that I've been in and worked and managed. And we generally have to get creative. We had a playground that was dated and needed replacing significantly, got to the point of safety and not being able to get parts that we had to completely remove the playground without even having funding yet to replace it, and had not been able to get capital funds for that. And so I'm sure that many of you have probably been in that situation out there. You got a playground that's ancient, it is struggling, and you're doing your safety checks and you're scared. And we just got to the point where we couldn't take that risk any longer and had to remove it. So we got feedback at that point that, people were wanting a playground. They're like, what happened to the playground? It was right beside one of our shelters. People rented it for birthday parties, which we all know are very important. And so we just had to start looking outside the box for funding. So we created a partnership with our local Elks Lodge and some people on that group that were willing and interested in coming to the table to work on not just a playground, but specifically an all-inclusive playground. And the Elks Lodge, basically the volunteers there, we put together a committee with them, and they were willing to go out and do the legwork to start reaching out to community partners for funding. We brought in some other groups. We have a special needs independent sports group who's a nonprofit in town. They operate off of donations completely already. So everything they do is free. So I had a lot of connections. And then we just had other people, once they started hearing about what we were doing, that wanted to come to the table. So people are like, I have a connection. I have a child with a disability. I work for this nonprofit who wants to help. People just came out of the woodwork. And so we really created this committee that just kept growing. And so then we have hundreds of people involved, wanting to help with donations, wanting to help with the project. And then we created a youth committee and brought members from all over the county, all different backgrounds, all different disabilities, all different abilities. And we sat down with them and said, what do you want? What do you want to see? And all in all, everybody wanted to see a playground that was fun for everybody, not just an inclusive playground, but a playground that challenged everybody, because the kids, they just don't care. They want to play with everybody. They want to be friends, and they want everyone to be able to have access and have fun. And so, came up with an amazing design, but the funding, y'all, the funding, amazing. We have funding that came from donations. We had stakeholder groups. We had nonprofits. We sought out grants. Tourism Development Authority. If you're not working with your Tourism Development Authority, people think it's a playground. It's not serving tourism. Absolutely, it's serving tourism.
Absolutely.
People come to town, they're visiting, they want to gather families, have family reunions. They book a facility, they want to use the playground. Absolutely funds tourism. Your softball, baseball tournaments in the park, use the playground. So they came to the table with funding. They were one of our first ones that really kind of jump-started it. We got a state grant through the county that came to the table to the tune of about $200,000. We got a local community foundation came to the table with a large grant. We just sought out money everywhere. For us, this is the largest playground that'll be in the county. It'll be the most money that's ever anywhere near been spent on a playground. And for us, it's going to end up being an $800,000 playground when it's said and done. For a community of our size, that's amazing. There's not anything like it anywhere near us. And so we're just really pleased with it. It's really about community and building that village, which is much smaller than the direct village right around you, but throughout the county, and really just talking to people and networking has been amazing. And the amount of relationships that we've just created in day-to-day life in Parks and Recreation, those all come to the table for something like this. And so it's been a really great experience to see everybody come to the table. We also had some corporate partnerships. One of our healthcare providers came on board. And so not only the playground, but we wanted the parents to be active. And so they came on board to provide adult fitness equipment, which will be located just outside in the same area, but around the playground. So the parents have a walking path around the playground and fitness equipment that they can be vested and active while they're watching their children. So it's pretty exciting for us.
Oh my gosh, it's fantastic. I tell you, now this is just really an example, folks, of what, if you dream the dream, it can happen. Carleen, obviously you drove this, and that very, very strategic to go and talk to the tourism and get them engaged. And boy, that had to have encouraged so many partners to come forward, because, anything that comes in, again, destinations or visits to our communities is economic development or any of that. So wise move, great job. Thank you so much.
Because when you think about, inclusive playgrounds, that is a destination and people will come. I just saw a data mapping story that was done about a playground that was inclusive, and people come from miles around because they may not have one in their
right.
So, you think about it being about equity, but it's also about, drawing people in and increasing tourism. So that was a really smart way to go.
Fantastic. And also, okay, Michael, come on and chime into this one.
Well, I'll tell you what, Jody and Anne Marie, you have some top gunners here, because I don't know if I can compete with that. I thought I got some really wow factors here, but well, let me try to at least come in a nice third here. But what I wanted to talk a little bit about was, and it's more of a snapshot or a business model as it relates to a wow factor, and it's something that's kind of progressively happened through my career, which is partnerships. And Carleen talked a little bit about that in her presentation, but I've been very fortunate over the years to have some unique and wonderful partnerships with different organizations, both public and private. And wanted to share a couple of examples of those. When I was in actually out of the field for 2 years, I worked for a hospital called Northwest Community Hospital here in Arlington Heights, Illinois. And we actually built a fitness center on Park District land, with the Park District paying for the facility, but we managed it. And so that's another way of providing services, right? In a way that we're not the experts in everything, but we can definitely partner with the experts. And so I would challenge a lot of our professionals out there to look at ways to, when an idea comes to you, look at ways to leverage those partnerships. And that was something that was very successful. We opened with over 4,000 members, and to this day, it's still a very successful operation. Another opportunity I had was with twice with a professional sports team. We have a what we call like a AAA hockey team here in Chicago called the Chicago Wolves, and we built an $18 million practice center with them. We, as the Hoffman Estates Park District, paid for the facility, but they ended up renting space in the facility for ice time and also administration offices along with training areas and locker rooms. And what was great about that partnership is we had the ice during the before and after school times, and then the teams would practice from like 10 to 3. So it was a lot of real nice synergy and continuity. And it just created a way to provide, during this time, we built this facility back in 2010. The Chicago Blackhawks were winning all the Stanley Cups and everybody wanted to play hockey. And our community was saying, we want hockey and we want to skate like, those professional figure skaters. So we were able to provide a service in a way that actually paid back that cost and also offered an opportunity for the players to coach, to train, to, it just created a lot of nice synergy for the area and actually became a regional draw, kind of like or even a national draw like Dan was talking about. And then finally, just to kind of piggyback a little bit on Carleen's talk about inclusion, currently at our park district here in St. Charles, Illinois, we partner with the Fox Valley Special Rec Association. I think a shout out to Alex. I think she's on the call. She's the director of that association.
Right.
She's a rock star down here, Jody. You got to get her on the call.
Absolutely.
But we partner with them and they actually provide inclusion staff for us. They provide that professional component that allows us to have that inclusion model in our regular programs and that expertise on staff. They actually have a facility here, a daybreak program where they actually operate out of a room for adults that have special needs and disabilities. And it's a win-win opportunity. So those are just some examples that I've had over the years.
Well, I tell you, you three have nailed it on. We can't do everything. And number two is we shouldn't do everything, because really when you do partnerships at this level and what you all are offering and what you have implemented, it's really good to have outside partners be creative with you. And it helps us be even better as agencies. Great job, you guys. Thank you so much for your input and for our audience. I hope that answered your questions. All right, I'm going to turn it over to you, Anne Marie. We have our first poll.
We do. And we want to ask you guys in the audience about innovation today. So let us know where you think you fall in innovation. Are you extremely innovative and implement a lot of innovative ideas? Are you innovative but struggle somewhat with implementation? Were you really innovative with COVID, but maybe not so much before or after? Are you more comfortable with another department testing innovation, but then implementing successful ideas that you learn about? Or are you just too busy for much innovation right now? And everybody's busy, so do not feel bad if that is your answer. It's certainly what's going on right now in the industry with, everybody has discovered parks that hadn't discovered parks maybe before. So we know everybody's really busy right now. So go ahead and let us know what you think about that one. Everybody's voting. All right, and panelists, you guys can vote as well, although we know you're all super innovative, so that's why you're here today.
That's exactly right.
All right, very good. So a couple people still voting. We're going to close this one out in about 5 seconds. So if you haven't voted, get that in, and we will end the poll in 3, 2, 1. And let's share those results. Innovative, but struggling with implementation. That is such a common thing. A lot of times you come up with fantastic ideas, but whether it's, the short staffing that everybody's experiencing right now, or maybe not knowing the ways to get innovative. And that's certainly something that, I think as people talk with each other and departments connect, that's maybe there's some things that can be shared there among departments. Great to see the second most popular answer was we're extremely innovative and implement many innovative ideas. I think that's true. There's so much innovation going on right now with parks. So that's exciting to see. So, all right, thank you to everybody for those poll results. And we are going to turn it back over to you, Jody, for our next question.
All right. Question 2, panelists. As a known leader throughout our field and one of our today's change makers, our audience is asking, What advisement would you give professional colleagues today when it comes to personal branding, time management, or anything connected to professional development? And all three of you are absolutely experts in this. So let's go to town on this. And Carleen, I'm going with you first.
Okay, thank you. All of these things are super key in your growth as a professional, and no matter where you're at in your career, the things that you always have to be working on. My recommendation is that you honestly just never stop. The key thing is don't stop. So don't stop working on self-development. Don't stop working on personal growth and networking. You constantly need to be networking, and just attending things like this is a way to network. All of these things are going to enhance your personal brand. And you want to use all these to help you want to feel balanced in your work and in your growth and your just work-life balance in general, which we always talk about. But by feeding yourself good information, you surround yourself with positive people, and you seek out mentorship to help you gain all of these things. And by doing things like that, you're really going to grow, and you're really going to connect with other people. And when you create that network, that helps you with your personal brand. And a tidbit, if you're not a reader, you need to become a reader, because if, people are recommending books when you go to a training, I'm the one over there scribbling them down and looking them up on Amazon, have them ordered right away, because that is how you work on personal growth, and learn. And you just have to keep that going. And you've got to create a thirst for that learning and getting that through reading and networking and learning from other people. And finally, I guess if you don't have an account on LinkedIn, you should. And I have a lot of people that are like, I don't do social media. Well, LinkedIn is, I guess you can consider it social media. It is, but it is networking, and it is where the marketplace is for work and for growth and for learning and for meeting people all over the world in areas that we work in, and you can learn from them. And you don't have to sometimes it's impossible for people to travel and get to national conferences where you can meet people across the globe. You can go on LinkedIn and find thousands of people in a matter of seconds that you can connect with all over the world, and you can learn from them. And there's learning opportunities for them, and they might be working in an area that you're not learning in, and you're able to glean from them and start researching what they're talking about to get more information. So again, I'm just going to go back to that. You've got to have a thirst for learning and growth, and just keep after it, and keep talking to people. And if you have opportunities, opportunities are not always going to come in the same department that you're working in now. They could be in nonprofit work in part related to Parks and Recreation. They could be in state work. They could be in another state at a different agency. And so I just encourage you, if you have the ability, to seek out new opportunities that are going to help you grow in your career, to go after it.
Great advisement. You're so right on LinkedIn. That has been one of the best social connections ever that has come forward, and very professional. So great advisement. Michael.
Boy, another great one, Carleen. Good one to follow. I would have to say 3 words: network, and network. That is the key to success. And I think we're all here, I've known Jody for a while, and it all comes through networking. And what does that look like, right? I was telling Jody a story the other day that I had a unique opportunity to work for a basketball player you might know, Michael Jordan. And he used to tell us every morning before the camp, he would tell us counselors, hey, this is your advice of the day. And he would tell us, if you see something you like, or you see someone you would like to emulate, reach out and talk to them. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone. I think all of us, if you ask most professionals, they'll tell you, I was either going to be a teacher or I was going to work in recreation, right? So we're all steward leaders. And I think what we need to think about that when we think about how do we network, how do we get involved, is that just pick up the phone and say, you know what, Jody, I saw you, and I'll tell you, this is a perfect example. I saw Jody at director school back in 2012. Maybe I shouldn't give the date, but anyways, her energy, her positive enthusiasm, I wanted to emulate that. So I tried to develop a relationship. There's been mentors in my life that, you know, their ability to present in front of a large crowd that maybe is somewhat contentious. Not that any of us ever experienced that, but you know, that was actually a joke, probably didn't catch on. But what I'm saying is that if you find something and you realize something in your own professional development, maybe you're a little weak and you see someone that you're thinking to yourself, wow, this is somebody that really gets it. Reach out to them or reach out to somebody maybe you know. I think unfortunately in our field, and statistics will tell you this, we lose those young professionals between the 2, 3, 4 years, right? We all remember dumping chlorine into the pool at 11 o'clock on a Friday night when all our other friends are outside, right? Having a great time.
Absolutely.
And we're like, what are we doing? You know, we're not making a lot of money. Why am I doing this? And unfortunately, we lose people that way. And I was fortunate enough to have mentors to say, you know what, Mike, stick with it. You're going to love it. And 20 years, 25, 30, I'm not going to say the number, but years that I've been in this field, I look back and those friends who chose other careers are saying, Mike, you did it right. You did it. You followed your passion. You did what you wanted to do. And, you know, we're reaping some of those benefits. So I would just encourage people, even you can reach out to myself. When in doubt, call. That's the biggest advice that I can give you. Expand your network and be careful how you expand your network. You got to, if you're looking to, you know, develop a mentorship with somebody or be a mentor for someone, realize the responsibility of that and that eyes are always on you. And you want to find a network that is credible, professional, and, you know, fills your bucket. So I think that's the best advice I can give Anne-Marie and Jody to that question.
Well, Michael, I'm glad you brought this up because I think so many times we pull back and we're so shy, even though we're top, you know, you'll be in a director's school of top executives that, my goodness, deal with a lot of challenges and are out in front of the public. But really, we are such a family. And I just don't know if people realize, and these young professionals that are viewing any of this or listening to this webinar or any of our shows, I can just tell you, you can pick up that contact and that phone. And if not, that email, send that email. Do not hesitate. We're all in this together. Dan, please bring us home on this one.
Well, and I think what Carleen and Michael said was exactly right. And you're seeing a lot more young professionals really figure that out in their careers to get into the networking. And I think what networking also brings to any relationship is a partnership aspect. When you build that networking, you feel more comfortable going out into other venues and doing the same thing with people in other industries, like Michael said and Carleen said about the connection with their projects and things they do. And we did the same thing in Broward, but we did it where I came from in Ohio State Park. So I will kind of change the tactic a little bit, and I see it as, you know, from my perspective at this point in my career is after I look back, is first and foremost is for me after those topics of partnerships and networking, all the other components, is to really recognize that we really truly are change agents in an industry that is going through a lot of change in itself. And we are empowering people to do a lot of different things that they never did before. Hence, it means you have to assemble people that are kind of, in a sense, change agents themselves, because you can't do all the change on your own. And leading by example and leading others to lead for you is just as the best you could ever do. If you can step out aside in many cases or in many situations during your career, you're doing everybody a good service because they will learn even more. And so, you know, for us and over my career, I've been through a lot of different things, streamlining and you know, budget cutting situations and COVID and all the other things we went through and emergencies. And I think the paradigm shifts of an organization as a leader or a potential leader in the future is really trying to figure out that organizational and emotional intelligence positions in any organization. I think I always go back on those books I've read that kind of prepared me for where I am today. I still have probably half of those sitting on my shelf right now that I started with 30 years ago. and that all of them seem to prove true today. And everything that you see from even the latest books out there, they all seem to say the same thing, and that is networking, partnerships, understanding the emotional intelligence and understanding your own emotional intelligence and how to utilize that in your careers and how to inspire people and everything else. And lastly, I think it boils down to understanding how to situationally lead in today's environment, which is different than what it was yesterday. And it really is, because we've got generations at work. We've got a lot of people. We talk about this DEI, diversity, inclusion, equity, inclusion. We have to understand that we're working with a lot of different people that we were not working with 30 years ago, and figuring out how to make that work. And you can capitalize on that and do some pretty neat things in this industry that I thought, again, 30 years ago, I wouldn't have even thought I was in that position. But today it's pretty neat when you can really go back and utilize some of those great skill sets. And parks people, there's nothing like them. We are multidisciplined, multifaceted, and it's pretty cool when you look at where many of our professionals are these days. And you can be 5 years into your career or 40 years into your career, but you got some pretty dynamic people in this industry. So branding, I've always branded on the partnership aspect. I've had more success in partnerships than I've had in about anything I've done in my career. I have more pride in it, more passion, I guess. So I think what Carleen and Michael said are right along what I would say, along with the component of making sure that you brush up on the skill sets that make for a good leader, because you're going to use those skill sets, even though you might be doing the chlorine in the pool at 11 p.m. at night. Maybe 5 years from that date, you might be in the office actually managing a group of people. And so you're going to understand not only what you had to do, but what they are doing as well today. So it's pretty important.
You just touch on something, Dan. I always went when was fortunate to go from entry level through the food chain all the way to the director and have a city county intergovernmental system. I always reminded myself when I'm asking people what they're, and I'm asking them to do something, I need to be educated on it and I need to understand what I'm asking them to do. And part of that is professional development of keep learning, even as the leader of the department or agency. So it really is everything from entry level all the way through your career, and hope you will keep learning. The other thing is, you know what, we're all in this together. And I just love it when we all learn from the industry in general and the private industry. Take advantage of that if they ever offer school or education. I can just tell you, I would constantly look for those type of educational opportunities, but even outside of our field. And many of you have addressed that. So take advantage of it. And then finally, if you're burning out, I can just tell you, always go back to basics. Always go back to your why. I cannot encourage you enough to go back and examine why you came into this field and why we're really there. So anyway, that was a pretty heartfelt question there. All right, Anne-Marie, back to you for our second poll.
Awesome. Yeah. And I just want to echo something that, all of you touched on today. And that is, with diversity comes perspective. And so think about other groups that you can reach out to, like Jody said, outside of the industry. I mean, that's one of the beauties of LinkedIn is, yes, there's park and rec groups to join, but there's marketing groups and there's sales groups and there's tech groups and there's lots of different people that can give you perspective. And then, don't be afraid to reach out to people who are not in your age group. So if you're young, reach out to some of these seasoned professionals and learn from them. But I think conversely also, as we get older, there's things that we can learn from young people. We had a show last year toward the end of the year, young professionals. And I'll tell you, those people, they didn't understand roadblocks yet that can get thrown in their way, and they had nothing to do with them. They just pressed forward and got things done and had such a fresh and innovative perspective. And on things like, social media that that maybe, you know, as you get older, you're not as in tune with some of that maybe. And they had some just really incredible tips on ways to use social media to build, you know, the department, the services in a lot of different ways. So don't stay in the box, just reach outside the box. There's a lot of different perspectives out there to help. All right, let's get into our second poll question. And on that one, we want to ask, how do you test innovation? So there's lots of different ways to do it. Maybe you don't test it at all. I don't know. But we wanted to know kind of, what do you think about when you're testing innovation? This is multiple choice. You can choose as many as you want. Is it through data and research? Do you do live one-on-one interviews with the public? Feedback in public meetings? Trying out ideas with a small group? Asking, comparing with other peer agencies? Do you use surveys? Do you look at attendance or revenue generation realized from the innovation? Or is there something else? And if it's something else, again, we can't come up with all the answers. There's lots of different answers and ways to do this. So if you do something else to test your innovation, just click that something else box and put that in the chat so we can share it with the team and share it with all the people watching today. So a lot of excited voting going on this one. I can see it's always interesting to have this behind the scenes look, as you can see all the different graph lines moving and changing. And there's a lot of different things that you guys are doing out there to test innovation. So that's very exciting. So we're going to give you guys about 5 more seconds. The voting is slowing down. So if you want to vote on this one, go ahead and do that right now. And we will end this one in 3, 2, 1. And it looks like the most popular answer is surveys. Well over 70% of you use surveys. So that's exciting to see. Also attendance and revenue generation. Yeah, very smart. I mean, if the program is doing well, that's obviously a really good indicator. 63% use data and research. So that's very interesting to see. Would love to hear some information if you care to share on what sort of data you look at or what kind of research you do. If you want to add that in the chat, we can share it later. Yeah, really, really good. So terrific. All right, we will stop sharing that one. Before I turn it back to Jody, Pam in the audience said, mentioning the youth group. Yes, they were on one of these shows. If you go to youtube.com/Playcore News, all of the old episodes can be found there. I don't remember exactly which one that was, Pam, but I do know you, Pam. Gary was actually also a panelist on the show. So I can email you. I can look that up and email you with which one it is, but they are all on there. So yeah, if there's anything that you want to see on previous episodes, we keep those up there in perpetuity. Lots of good learning there. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Jody.
Absolutely. And Pam, thank you for that question. And Anne-Marie, we will get that because that was an amazing episode of innovation in itself with young people, our young leaders. Over the next 2 years, panelists, innovation has been the name of the game in relation to Park and Recreation's getting back on their feet. What has been your biggest challenge or challenges over the last 2 years in reference to your agency work, and or what was your solution to the situation or situations? So here we go, because everybody's living a different story. Yes, same path, and usually parks and recreation agencies, as we're talking about, but it's usually got a different slant to it. And let's go ahead and let's start with Michael on this one.
Well, thank you, Jody. I guess I'm going to address the gorilla in the room, right? That nasty word called COVID, right?
Yeah.
But I'm going to drill down a little deeper because I remember back in March, I think it was 2020 now, is that what it was? And thinking, okay, this COVID thing, this COVID-19, it'll be 2 weeks and we'll be back to normal, right? I'm walking the building, I'm all alone, my admin assistant's here, it's her and I, and you could hear a pin drop. All right, it'll be fine, we'll figure it out. Well, that 2 weeks became 2 months, which became obviously 2 years. I think what I learned, and one of the biggest challenges is probably like everybody on the call here, you've almost seen a lot of, I don't want to say everything, but let's call it 90%, or you know somebody who's dealt with that, right? But a pandemic, leaving the house and you're at risk, right? How do you manage that? But the deeper issue here that I learned and the challenge that I had was, and Dan touched a little bit on it with DEI and all these other, wonderful initiatives that are going on, is everybody's got an opinion, right? And so I learned, managing a large group of team members, is that everybody has a different opinion. And I was really challenged by managing that and leading that. And then on top of that, staying relevant, right? I brought my team together via Zoom or Teams, whatever it was, and said, look, we've got to figure out a way to be relevant. One of the things that I'm very proud of it here at this district is we did not furlough one full-time staff.
Wow.
Pivoted those responsibilities. We were serving hot dogs down at the mini golf course. And what it allowed us to do was pivot quickly based on the mitigations, right? Based on the guidelines that the state was giving us, where some of my peers were furloughing or laying off and people were getting other jobs. So when those mitigations lifted, we were able to go right back to the programming that we needed to do. Our board and our director, Holly, they were all on board in reference to, let's show the commitment. And what it's done in our industry, specifically statewide, is shown the professionals that we are committed to you and that we will work with you, and we'll figure other ways to save on costs, but we're going to stand behind our team. We're going to stand strong. And so that was one of the biggest challenges we learned and one of the biggest successes. And what we're able to do with that is be able to provide things virtually, to Dan's point and Carleen's point, partnerships, right? We contacted some local breweries. We were doing tastings online, and beer masters or brewmasters were teaching classes, and they were huge, so we just looked at it from a different angle. And then when we were able to pivot or we were able to change, we were able to bring that back right away while still offering those other services, virtually or whatever. And so very proud of that. And, but that was the biggest challenge is how do we stay relevant, right? How do we manage personalities in COVID, right? We all understood that there was a virus, but everybody had a different opinion. So we learned a lot about each other, and we threw masks at times, and we, had some intense conversations, but we got through it. And, but again, that was probably the biggest challenge for us, is just managing all those different personalities and staying relevant with our community.
Well, I tell you, I think so many can identify with that are listening to the show. And I think the key was you were able to keep enough staff and keep things ready to basically implement immediately. Excellent job, Michael, and your crew, and everyone sticking it out. Dan.
Well, I want to go see Michael's place, because those brewmasters and beer master tents, I didn't get invited to any of those events. So
I got your email, Dan. You're
mask and I like Chicago. So
there you go. Come on down.
Yeah,
that's right.
So anyway, thanks to a lot of different people, I think parks became really relevant quickly. I think people figured out that there's no better place than being outdoors. And but in South Florida, thanks to NRPA, they did a kind of a database system where they created stories from park systems that spoke on the topic of COVID. We were one of those that played a role in that, along with everybody. But it was kind of neat, but in some ways it was definitely interesting. But in Broward County, tourism was a big activity here. It's 2 million people live in the county, and about 15 million people that visit annually, along with it's about a $15 billion industry. So it's really important to us. But with 23 miles of shoreline, Atlantic Ocean, and all the vast Everglades, it creates a lot of synergies. But unfortunately, during COVID, it was probably our worst nightmare. It brought in people from all over the world, and very, very quickly. And it created some real hardships for us as an agency. And on top of that, the 3 counties in the south part of Florida had over 43% of the current cases in the state, just in those 3 counties during COVID, during the height of COVID. So we were really challenged with trying to operate in a whole different fishbowl that we never used to. And as Michael said, none of us would have ever anticipated this. Now, fortunately for us in Broward County, our 855 full-time employees and others that, and we've got part-time staff and volunteers, they're essential during emergencies. So in some ways, I'm not going to say we were built for COVID, but we were better for it. And the fact that we have a lot of hurricanes and disasters down here that we are always prepping for. And we in Parks were assigned anyway to be the logistics services branch for the entire county. So hence it put us in a management role that we already were aware of, including, operating in an EOC environment, delivering shelter supplies and volunteering and so on, and managing pod sites and distribution sites and all these other components, debris management and everything you could think of. But what it did for us is it kind of exposed us front and center. And we actually were the first ones to actually operate a mini Amazon warehouse where we did all the distribution for PPE for about 9 months, 16 hours a day. And thanks to a lot of different people from different agencies, different municipalities, our state emergency management, our local emergency management in Broward County, we all came together and we actually distributed over 2 million masks and everything from anything below that to 313 or 330 long-term care centers, 31 municipalities, and a host of hospitals, about 35 hospitals around the county. So for 9 months, we were just intensely involved. And so I think it opened up a lot of eyes, and it really put us in a position where we'd never been before. We were working with National Guards, with emergency management, to Florida health departments, to hospitals, law enforcement, a number of other components. We were the largest testing, vaccination, monoclonal sites in the entire county. We had sites in about 3/4 of our regional parks. At various times, we were the food distribution site during various parts of the emergency. We had these large parks where you could actually run thousands of people through a day. And so we were doing our very best in responding not only to that, but we still had a few hurricanes and a few tropical storms hit us in those 2 years. So it was really kind of interesting.
Wow.
Taking up tents and bringing them down and doing a lot of other things. So what I would say to this is it was really an eye opener for us, but I will tell you that I was no more proud of anybody in my entire years of working in parks than I was of our staff that did a lot of different things in some pretty odd circumstances and still have fun doing it. It was a test, it was a stress, but I got to remember what Michael did with the Brewmaster tents and all the other things he did. But I think it goes without saying, we were all of us in every city and every county. It seemed like we were all busy with this. And I think adapting to the situation and not letting it get to you personally. And really, I think it shows again, that same thing we always talk about. We're so multifaceted and we could do so many different things. So I was really appreciative of that. Although the emergency and the COVID and all that was truly a pandemic and a tragedy, but I think it brought out the very, very best in what parks really means to our residents and really to the nation. It shows you that we are really, really good at what we do, and now we're seeing it now as more than ever. Just in June alone of this year, we were up 39%.
Wow.
Attendance, 39% attendance from the last 3 years. That's pretty amazing. It's showing you people really want to get outdoors. So thank you. That was good testimony.
Amazing. And I'll come back to a little bit of a summation, but Carleen, I want to give you a chance to address this one.
Okay, thank you. It's pretty amazing, Dan, everything y'all did there. Michael, your insight into some fun stuff that some of us missed out on during that time. But we were a little bit hybrid and had our own challenges. We are also West and North Carolina is a very tourism-based economy as well, kind of like Dan. And so I think, Dan, when some of your locals were trying to get away from that, they come to West North Carolina. That's what we're known as, their destination in the off season, but they came early that year. They came in the winter when they're usually not here. And so we had a lot of that impact as well coming up from Florida. But we were just looking at ways, first everybody's kind of scrambling, like what is really happening? Where do we go? And really just kind of managing the fears that staff had. at first, like what's going on, businesses have already shut down. At first, our doors were still open. Nobody really knew what was going on. Just trying to manage that fear into productivity so we could serve. And I think a little bit of a generational gap of understanding. I mean, those of us who've been in government work for years know that we're here to serve, and we are the first call of duty for emergency services, no matter what department you're in. And I felt like that, at least in my department, that we had some gapping of that understanding. And so there was definitely some staff that were like, oh, no, I don't want anything to do with that, and so had some gaps there with how do we serve? They're scared legitimately, that nobody knew much. And they're like, no, I don't want to be a part of that, so we had some of that going on, and just trying to learn from those people. And we don't have to agree, but we do need to work to understand each other. And I think that was our biggest challenge at first was, okay, where are we at? How do we understand everybody else's fears and thoughts on how to move forward with this? And just understanding the amount of information that was coming at us. And I can't say enough for the North Carolina Parks and Recreation Association during that time for us. We established a director's chat, and we did it once a week. And we're still doing it. We don't have quite as many people on there nowadays, but it's been fantastic. And we were just literally sorting through the information coming out. And I'm sure some of you, Dan and Michael, you guys probably had similar things going on, but that was a wealth of information because we were actually getting really current information through Parks and Recreation, more so than I felt like other agencies were getting. And so I was really pleased with that. But then we took that and kind of decided what to do. We had people reaching out to us, wanting to have services that we didn't have. They were struggling with mental health. They were struggling with kids being at home. They were struggling with not even want to go to stores to source things for their kids, to do. So we started looking at opportunities and how we could help with that. The other thing was that people financially were being hurt because some people didn't have their jobs anymore. So I looked at our budget and said, okay, what are we not doing now? We're not doing special events right now. So we took all the funding that we had for special events and started utilizing that to create, we didn't have any really kind of catchy name, but it was basically just like a recreation packet pickup. And my staff worked to create games, activities, learning pieces. They would create puzzles, word puzzles that had to do with Parks and Recreation. And some of those were online. And then the rest we sourced materials for, and they created crafts, and we would do a video once a week that was kind of like showed them how to do the craft. And the videos were short. We kept them like 2 to 3 minutes. You could either hear what was going on or you could see it. So there was kind of a diversity in how people could hear and take the information in. They were posted on our website, YouTube. And then once a week, we would do a packet pickup. Parents would just sign up online. They would drive through. We literally had a drive through that they would get a bag full of all the craft supplies for however many kids they had, a little information sheet on how to do everything, and then where to go to watch the video. It went off the chain. Like it was crazy. We really didn't know what we were doing. We're not normally making huge videos. We're not usually doing a lot of things we aren't normally doing. And it went really well. We had a great feedback from the community. The parents were like, we can't thank you enough for this. And so it was something that kept my recreational programmers engaged during that time with something that they feel like they were still doing programming, not just totally different work. We ended up winning an award from the National Association of County Parks and Recreation Officials for that, which we were excited about. I was happy for them. They were rewarded that because the rest of the time, as you guys know, we were so overwhelmed on the park side that recreation staff were working to support them in any ways that they could, which kind of almost feels like the reverse of what they're normally doing. And so those were just challenging times. We just tried to work through it. The other challenge with that was when we started to come back on site, so if the staff that were at home and the fears of coming back to work was a big challenge. And I know that there's still people who are working remote today, in different agencies depending on their jobs. And there's still some changes in fear and how you bring people back in and re-engage in a person-to-person, setting, especially as we go through ups and downs with COVID still. And we just really worked to meet with staff and talk about those concerns and really worked to try to understand it and come up with solutions that worked for everybody on how to get back to site. Because there wasn't an easy button answer. It wasn't like everybody has to be here tomorrow. It wasn't like that, or everybody stayed home. We're Parks and Rec, we're hands-on. We do have to come back to work, but it was like trying to work through those slowly with everybody.
Well, I can tell you, I'm so glad you all three have addressed just issues or understanding of the staff to understand that we will be part of the emergency management. Some of our staffs, we've heard this over the shows, we're acclimated to the emergency management part, but there were a lot of staff that were not. And they kind of got a real refresher course on it is all of our jobs. So I just think we've learned so many lessons. And that is one reason we're bringing up, and a fellow colleague brought forward that resource that's going to be on August 16th at 2:00. What is ahead of us and again, with the Chambers of Commerce, and you've been the chair, you know that, Michael. They've got a lot of information that really helps us, and we've all interacted at times with chambers, but I think we do need to reach out and go to some of these things that are out there to give us a leg up on fall. And of course, you're already into fall and working on fall. So, but anyway, great responses. Really appreciate you helping us out. Also, Anne Marie, I have a request that I was just sent. Could you put in the chat where someone could find, and I don't know if you can find the recording. They had a hard time getting on, and they would like the recording of this show. They
Yes.
would like.
If somebody wants to just ask that question, if you haven't yet,
Okay.
I can't write in the Q&A unless somebody asks a question. So just let me know that here. I'll tell you what, I will respond to what Pam said here. It is YouTube.
Excellent.
Okay, there we go. That's where you should find all of that.
Okay, and I'll respond to them. So if you're a fellow colleague, somebody asks you for the show, this is, you'll see it in the chat, and please share that with them for the future reference for them. I'm gonna go ahead, and Anne Marie, let's go to our favorite segment. I'll come back to question 4 if we have time.
Okay, yeah, let's do that. Absolutely. We love this segment. This is where we have our panelists tell about someone in their team that they wanted to recognize. And we are going to start that off, first of all, with Dan.
Okay. So for me to talk a little bit about this, I'd like to briefly say that it goes back to that last question about the COVID environment. I just happened to hire a new emergency ops manager for parks about 8 months before COVID hit. And it was just, I don't know what it was, a sixth sense or whatever. Someone sent me a message, you got to hire someone really good. And so we did, and he actually worked on our state team for emergencies. So he came to Broward County and was able to help us lead our efforts on a division-wide basis. And as I said before, we have a lot of people that I could be thanking today, but I want to give a shout out to him because of his work and organizing the various units and teams. And what I thought Carleen said a very good point, and that working with a lot of the different networking, parks people are just unbelievable at it anyway. So when they get into these emergencies, they're already networking urban leaders and state leaders and local leaders, city and county roundtables. We already had that set up. So we were able to do some pretty neat things because we already were talking. And most places don't do that. And so it was kind of neat. And so I just want to give a shout out to Edgar Ruiz and his efforts to help us in Broward County.
Awesome. Very cool. That's awesome. Yeah, I know Carleen just left her department, so she was going to sit this one out, but I know she thinks her entire team that she just worked with is completely awesome. But that's why she doesn't have a slide in here. I didn't forget her. So we're going to move on. Michael, why don't you tell us about Jen?
Yeah, so Jen Bergerman is our Assistant Superintendent of Recreation here in St. Charles, Illinois. And it's tough. We've got just a phenomenal team here, got some phenomenal professionals in Illinois, but Jen, when I was hired here 4 years ago, almost to the day, we sat down and you talk about innovator and change maker. She is amazing. So we were fortunate enough, as I talked about during COVID, to really be aggressive and progressive and innovative. And she led that charge. She developed our program inventory. We were pumping out 63 virtual programs, a session. I mean, it was crazy, the innovation that she had. And I'm a little bit more, I'll call it conservative when it comes to change and different things as it relates to certain things we do. But she is just, she's a rock star, and she has just done a phenomenal job of leading the team, keeping the morale high, coming up with innovative and creative ideas. And, she's well respected in the industry, both locally, on the state level, and the national level. She was fortunate enough to, a couple of years ago, to attend director school and an RPA, which was a great experience for her. So she, again, is somebody that, if you're looking to develop a network, if you're looking to learn, she's passionate about education, and she's just really set the tone for a lot of our programs and some of the success in our facilities. And I just want to give a shout out to her, because she just really gets it and has created a lot of success here and a lot of value back into our stakeholders and our residents. So thank
Very
you.
cool. Awesome. Congratulations. That sounds great. And Jody, so that we have more time for that last question, I went ahead and tacked our audience participation, or audience slides, submitted slides onto the end of this. So we'll do those real quick, and then I'll get to you, and then we'll have a little bit more time for that. Audience member sent in for an innovative project. They wanted to share Youngs Creek Park in Franklin, Indiana. I guess this was put in right in the downtown area. So talking about tourism like we were earlier, that's the idea of this, is to really help increase tourism. They have an inclusive playground, a very large 5,000 capacity amphitheater, a splash pad, pickleball courts. I don't know how many people know sign language, but their bike racks down there spell out the town name of Franklin. So I think that's very clever.
So neat.
Yeah, isn't that neat? So just a really neat thing with walking trails. There's a pedestrian bridge linking to other trails. So just a really great effort to bring everybody to that downtown and increase tourism there. And then we wanted to share, I don't know how many people have seen that the latest round 6 of the ORLP Outdoor Recreation Legacy Program has just been released. But this is pretty cool because they've done some things to make this a little bit more accessible for urban areas. This one is really designed to create opportunities within the Land and Water Conservation Program for urban areas that are underserved. That's a specific market. But what they've done to really change this is that city size cap has now decreased. It used to be 50,000. Now you only have to have 30,000 residents to qualify for this portion. So that's a big change. The maximum grant amount has increased from 5 million to 10 million. So some huge opportunities there to do things. Even, if you're thinking about new parks, there's just a lot of options there. Cities now no longer have to be part of that census designated urban area boundary that was required before, and the pre-application requirement has been removed. So a lot of changes in this to be able to help people qualify for that. So that's super exciting. We wanted to share that with everybody. And then just a quick blurb on our next episode, which is September 15th. We're going to talk about honoring community spirit. So that is going to be really, really fun and exciting. We hope you'll join us. As with all of them, you can register at education.playcorps.com. And we hope to see you then. And Jody, I'm going to turn it back to you. That gives us just about 7 minutes for that last question. So we should have plenty of time.
Well, and we've got some dynamic directors that are going to be on this next show. So you don't want to miss this, because if you've got historical sites and you're trying to really, not only preserve or refresh, or how do you interact with your community, don't miss that show, because we've not addressed this. So this will be really great. Also, we've been talking about your agency, and this show is about us, for us. And the bottom line is, you all are so seasoned professionals. You've been through a lot personally. You've been through a lot professionally. We really want to know, and people, this is directly from one of our audience. talk about your biggest challenge professionally and personally over the last 2 years, because there are people out there that not everything's been rosy, whether it's been mentally, whatever the challenge is. Please share this. And Dan, I would like you to start on this one.
Yeah, I'll be quick, I hope. What Michael said is, no one expected this. And I know Carleen was mentioning it as well when we went through the COVID. And so we were all fearful. We had our own families we had to worry about and relatives, and we also still had to do our job. And in our case, we were essential, so there was no way we were leaving work. And so we were there when everybody else was furloughed or moving, home or something else. And many of our staff were working in warehouses doing different things. And so the stress level on all of this, personally as well as professionally, was unbelievable. It really was. I've spent many years in parks, and I spent years in military, law enforcement, and and various capacities in emergency management over many, many years. And I say this without a doubt, this was my most stressful period of time in the years I spent in the industry. It was the most rewarding time, but it was the most stressful time for our family. So I'd say it's just getting back to the normal, the new normal. And I say this is a new normal, as we all know that, because we're still not out of everything. Communication gaps from Zooms and all these other call networks, we are now dealing with the aftermath of that.
That's right.
That's what we have to worry about. And I'm seeing it every day in our staff. The burnout, the aftermath of not communicating well over 2 years. We did it through Zoom and other means. Don't get me wrong, that might be the new normal, but we're still getting used to it. And so we're having to face that. So it's going to be a real interesting time for parks professionals to figure out in leadership roles, even employees that are just working day to day, how do we make it better for them? Because you don't get paid anymore. You just have to still do the same job with the same amount of resources. How do we make it good for them to work for us, besides just the gratitude and passion of working in parks? Because it's a hard job. I mean, it really is a hard job. It's not an easy job. It was 30 years ago, it was because you want to work outdoors or in a rec center or a community center or do something different. Now it's a tough job. And so that's going to be the challenge. And I face it every day. And I know the stress and the burnout factor is still there with many of our staff. So that's where we're at.
Very real. Very real. Carleen.
Well, first I want to say Dan's 100% right. Everything he said, we all experienced. And I'm sure everybody can ditto that as well. But the challenges for us and the anxiety is going through all that and the stress levels, especially as a director or departments where you have, larger divisions under the directors, is that, I find myself and my leaders, you take on that extra load because your staff are already at burnout. And so just working with other directors and really kind of network, what we've been talking about, networking and talking about how everybody's dealing with that, because most of us are kind of a driver personality, so we're pushing through all that, but taking care of yourself was extremely important. But we're trying to take care of our staff, and that's just inherently what you do. And so if there's staff out there not feeling that, or, not understanding quite how much it's been on your leadership in your department, know that most of them have been taking on a huge amount of load to help you get through this time so you can continue doing your job and not experience as much burnout. I know for us, one of the biggest challenges was the amount of growth in our parks, just daily use. I mean, a great example, we have a huge 18-hole disc golf course that gets people, we probably have people from 20 different states there every week utilizing the disc golf course. It's a pretty unique course. I mean, we quadrupled the amount of people using that course probably in the first 2 weeks of COVID. I mean, it was just amazing. And so, but we saw that throughout our parks. And so the impact to our park staff, at that time, they were able to manage that load because we weren't having regular softball games and we weren't having regular programmed games in the parks. But then when those things came back, the impacts of those people still using the parks daily is still there.
Absolutely.
And, Dan mentioned, having the same resources, not increased resources, definitely have that. But although the recruitment has changed. And so where in Parks and Recreation, especially on the recreation side, we have always supplemented with seasonal or temporary park staff, which you can't get right now. And so although you may have resources to pay them, they're not coming. You don't have any of them. And so,
Mhm.
whereas you maybe had 20 seasonal staff, you're lucky if you have 5. And so that burden is really, really tough on the maintenance management side of your parks out there, and taking care of your recreation facilities. And so still feeling that crazy tough burden right now. And still really trying to tell that story, which I know everybody is across the nation, to say, hey, hello, the administration of
I'm
Parks and
human. I'm
Recreation,
human. I
we
can
need
do
some
this.
help, and everybody's raising that red flag, or the white flag saying we give up, whatever, people are leaving, and we don't want to see that, because the burnout is real, the stress, the anxiety is real, and we really want to take care of those people, and lessen that burden so they can have an enjoyable job,
Absolutely.
without that load of stress. So
Absolutely. Michael, bring us home on this one, because you're hearing the heart and you're hitting their soul.
Mhm.
Michael?
Yeah, so I'm just gonna say it, right? It's mental health. And anybody who says it isn't is not being honest. I mean, if you didn't struggle with anxiety, depression, all the factors, all those 5 feelings, then I don't know if you're human. And so for me, I was, personally struggling not only with, keeping the morale high, but also just keeping my spirits myself. Went through some
Mhm.
life changes, and during that time, and at the same pace, my team is going through a lot of different things. They were losing family members to COVID, and it was a very challenging time. So for me, it's mental health, and to this topic, this innovation, right? How are we going to respond to that? So, we talk about what's that next thing. Well, I really think as devastating as COVID was, it got people in the parks, right? It got people outside, and that's what we want, right? No person left inside, that big motto that we all try to promote. So they've had that experience. And now how does mental health, right, play into this? How do we leverage that to add value back into that experience? I have friends who are nurses and doctors, and they were on psych wards watching people to make sure that they weren't
Yeah.
having a challenge. And so how, as we in Parks and Recreation, how can we now leverage that challenge and given them an experience to help come out of that? As Dan and both Carleen said, it's the aftermath, right? If you've ever experienced being a lifeguard and making a save, right? You get done and everything's okay, and now all of a sudden you're exhausted, right? Because you had this traumatic experience. And I think that's what we're going through, and I think we need to embrace that. We need to not be afraid to say that I'm struggling just as much as you are, right? And we need to find ways to add value back into people's lives through Parks and Recreation. And so that, to me, was the personal challenge, but it's also the opportunity, right? It's the opportunity to share and to be honest and raw, and just realize we're all going through it, but let's do it together. And as Parks and Recreation professionals, let's find a way to help add value back to, there's no other profession, in my opinion, that can do that, right?
That's right.
We've got the resources,
Right.
we've got the amenities, we've got the network, we've got the family, as you say, Jody. Let's use that leverage, and let's use those tools and provide that back. The only other thing that I want to share is I was watching a lot of people lose their job, and Jody, you mentioned this on the front end. I chair our Parks and Recreation Foundation. I'm very proud of this. We gave away $33,000 to 66 professionals, $500 checks. We just gave it to them. We had families that were both husband and wife were furloughed. They didn't have an income. So we're very proud of being able to give them those resources and support them during that time. And, but it was a challenge, because these were personal friends who were emailing us saying, I can't pay my rent, I can't pay my mortgage.
Exactly.
And we were able to at least alleviate a little bit of that pressure. So again, I just think that mental health is a big opportunity, and it's to anybody who says that wasn't a challenge, I'd really question that. But I think both Dan and Carleen gosh, the stories about the opportunities you provided and the difference you made during this last 2 years is phenomenal. So,
well, you just said it, Michael. You just said it. I think that's what we're hearing loud and clear: mental health. And I think it all affected all of us, whether we were at work, family, whatever it was. So glad you all, and all 3 of you, have been so candid and honest. That is what this show is about being authentic And in every case, you have been that. Thank you so much. Well, folks, you've listened to some of the most dynamic people in the field, and please call on them. They are so open to help, and don't hesitate to call. And Anne Marie, anything else we need to bring forward?
I cannot top that. So
I know. It's amazing.
absolutely.
Thank you all.
Thank you guys so much. And thanks to our audience as well. And we'll see you next time. Have a great week.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Be safe.